Hey everybody, it's Dave Cooper, Gerry McCaughey, and Jennifer is on with us as well. What's happening, everybody?
Good morning, or this is the morning. Good morning, Dave. I waited a long time to get interviewed by you.
Yeah, well, I've been waiting a long time to interview you. We've crossed paths many times, but never really could ever just get together. We've always been going 100 miles an hour, right?
So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear it. So, well, listen, I want to give everybody a quick update, right? So Jennifer is going to be in the background today. I am in West Islip, New York. We're doing a modular addition for a hospital down here, Good Samaritan Hospital. So we wanted to come down and promote it. And, you know, we got to worry a little bit. We've had the Blue Angels flying by, the airplane guys, and they killed the internet signal on us yesterday and today a little bit. So you're in the middle of something. You can't send an email. You can't do anything. But Jennifer, you're going to monitor questions and everything on the backside of this, and then we'll pull you back in here after we get going.
Sounds great.
Sound good? Perfect. So, all right. So I'm going to put you out. That leaves you and I, Gerry. I mean, we got a lot to go over.
Oh boy, here we go.
All right. So first off, Gerry, I think congratulations are in order for the Ivory Awards. Way to go. Thank
you very much. I think it's a great. I mean, I think it's a great endorsement of the team and what that team has achieved in a very short period of time in the U.S. market. So no, we're delighted.
Yeah. Well, you should be. Like you said, up and running, what, 3 years?
Yeah, hardly even 3 years, but yeah, say roughly 3 years we've been in the market. Right. And this is our second award. I mean, last year we were lucky enough to I think you were there, to win the Building Systems Council, actually a number of awards at the Building Systems Council Summit last year, and then this year to already have won the Ivory Award, which is, I mean, it's incredible. But it is an incredible endorsement of the team that work at Entekra.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I was there last year at the BSC with I think Alan Fannin. Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's our Alan Fannin, our SVP of engineering. He flew over from Ireland to pick up the award.
Right. Well, he did a great job. I actually caught him on camera. I had to pull and pry him, but he did a great job.
Yeah, I'm sure he's listening now, but yeah, Alan doesn't like really to go out front like that, but
right.
I had to push and goad him to do it, but he agreed finally to do it. And then you managed to get. We doubted you were going to get him to come on screen, but he did.
Oh yeah.
He did a good job.
Well, you know what? I just I don't give people an option. I just put the camera up and let's say, let's go.
You're very persuasive.
So we got a lot to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about labor issues. We're going to talk about FiOS. We're going to talk about the plant in Modesto. So, you know, I'll leave it up to you, but I think let's hear a little bit about Gerry McCaughey and Team Entekra and give us just a quick backstory elevator speech.
Okay. I mean, what I'd say is the starting point is, I mean, the Entekra team, especially the senior guys in the Entekra team are all, I don't want to say the word veterans, but in many ways they are. They're extremely experienced people that most of them, probably the only industry they've ever worked in has been the European offsite industry. Because, I mean, despite what people might think, I mean, in Europe, there is basically no such thing as stick framing. If you're going to build a wooden frame building, and it doesn't matter whether it's single story or it's 6 stories. Actually, now I think in the UK they can go 7 story. It's always going to be built offsite. So all of the guys in Entekra all have a lot of knowledge and experience behind them in every type of building, from single family to multifamily to hospitality to commercial to hospitals to offices, you name it. Over the last 30 years, we have framed it offsite. But where the company comes from, I mean, this is my family's third time in offsite construction. My dad started the original company in Ireland after emigrating to the United States, came back to Ireland, started a company that became the largest offsite company in Britain and Ireland. He basically started an industry. Then in 2005, he left that company. In 1990, myself and my brother Gerry and Jim McBride started a company called Century Homes in Ireland with the intention of becoming the largest in Europe. And 15 years later, we were the largest in Europe. And then we sold that company in 2005. Sorry, we started that in 1990, and in 2005, we sold that to Kingspan, which is a big insulation and building materials manufacturer around the world, although they're Irish headquartered. And then I moved back to the US again, and watched the industry here for a while and thought, why are these people still stick framing? And then one day I got together with a couple of the guys from Century and Brand Co, my partner in this, and said, do you think this is worth having a shot at in the US? And we basically sat down and said, okay, let's have a go at this. And 3 years ago, we set up Entekra in Northern California. And here we are.
Yeah, and you're operational, correct? Up until
Absolutely.
this point, anyhow, right?
Yeah. Well, now to be fair, a lot of our work is in the core Bay Area of San Francisco, and that's those 6 counties, which now has been extended. Actually, you've got 7 when you count in the city of Berkeley, and then you have the counties of San Benito and Monterey. They've also shut down, and ironically, a lot of our work is in that area, so they're at a complete standstill. So we still have customers that are operating in the Sacramento and into the Valley areas that are still going, but the big core of that business is now shut down. Although we have an indication yesterday that we hope there's going to be some easing of those restrictions on May the 5th. So we're optimistic about that.
Sure. Well, let's. So that's a good place. Let's hop into you opening up this manufacturing plant. You guys taking that that leap of faith and coming from Europe over here, Ireland, to open up here. Give us a little bit of the process. How has it been so far? I mean, you're winning awards, so I'm going to assume it's been pretty good response for you.
Yeah, I mean, it would take hours alone, Dave, just to go into that, to answer that question in itself. But I mean, I'll try as quickly as I can. When we initially thought about the market, we were thinking to ourselves, the question we kept asking ourselves is, why are they not doing it? And that really was the hardest question to answer, because no matter who you asked, you got a different answer. Mm-hmm. So basically nobody knows. So we had to do a colossal amount of research and try to figure out for ourselves. And we knew ourselves, we couldn't just work on anecdotes. We had to find some factual basis for why the United States was an outlier in the Northern Hemisphere when it came to wooden frame homes. And it is an outlier. So why is it? I mean, and think about it the other way around from our perspective. We're looking at the country that put the only man on the moon, building using a technology that hasn't changed in 200 years. And thinking, and this is the headquarter. California is the headquarter of Apple. It's the headquarter of Cisco. It's the headquarter of all the technology that goes on in the United States. And you look at housing and you go, this is. And then you look at all the countries where they're doing offsite, and you think, there's something not right here. But we didn't know the answer. Nobody else knew the answer. So we went about a 2-year process, and that's how long it was. A 2-year process of gathering information in the US market and basically talking to everybody. And I mean, we spoke to everybody. And we came up then at the end of it with a report ourselves, internal report ourselves, that said, this is what we've learned. This is what we see. This is our conclusion as to why it is the way that it is. And out of that, then the discussion came, is it now worth taking the risk for us? Can we, effectively as a bunch of Irish guys, think we can arrive into the United States market and change something that hasn't changed in 200 years? And that was probably the biggest, that's where the moment, that's where the rubber hits the ground, and because you're about to put money into the ground, and you're going, right. Yeah, we think we can do this. And you could say in many ways it's an arrogant way to look at it, to think that you can do it, but it's a frightening proposition. But I suppose that's the life of an entrepreneur. And like all of the guys that started Entekra are all entrepreneurs. Like we're all risk takers. Like the guys that even left some of the jobs to start with Entekra, left other offsite companies in Europe to come start Entekra. I mean, they were taking a big risk as well. But it was the secret to that, I think, was the team that we put together. I mean, this was not done by a bunch of high-tech guys thinking, oh, we can radicalize the construction industry and have no knowledge in the industry. This was a bunch of guys who basically had worked for 30 years in the industry and had built 2 of the most successful offsite companies in Europe, saying, yeah, we think there's an opportunity here. And that core, that group, that's what built the confidence. And when we all said it, yeah, we think we can do this. And then 3 years ago, we went and we leased a building, in a 27,000 square foot building in Ripon in Northern California, and started from there and went out to see how was the market going to react to our product.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know about the other building that you had. So, well, the market reacted pretty well, it looks like. And I think that, it has a lot to do with your team. And like you said, yeah, it was a risk, but it was a calculated risk. And you were working with people that were proven already, that really they have the entrepreneurial drive, but there's a lot of brain power behind what you guys are doing. It's just not, you're not winging this.
No, absolutely not. I mean,
Yeah.
I said to the guys as well, and I'll say this now. I mean, I'm the lucky guy that gets to sit here and talk to you. And I'm the lucky guy that gets acknowledged on the Ivory Prize and these things. But I'm not the guy. The guys that are doing this, it's not guys. I mean, we're talking about guys and girls here, and there's a colossal amount of them. And if we were to add the total amount of offsite experience that exists in Entekra, this might sound arrogant, but I doubt there's many. If you put all the other companies in the United States together, you'd come up with the figure of the amount of knowledge and experience that we have. Like even my dad, who still supports us today, we were doing a calculation. He has approximately 175,000 offsite buildings under his belt, right? And that's, wow. When I say under his belt, I mean from Ireland, the UK, Italy, Germany, Japan, and Saudi Arabia. My dad built offsite built homes for the officers in the United States Army in Saudi Arabia in the 70s on a Saudi Aramco site. So the knowledge and the experience that's in this company is just, I mean, I can't, and it's what I want to get across here, it's unrivaled. You name it, we have built it, and we have the scars on our backs to prove it. We didn't get everything right along the way, but we got up and we went again, and we learned. And that's what we're even doing in the US. We haven't got everything right since we came in here. We've had some scars, but we've got up and we've learned, and we've gone again.
Well, let's talk about all this experience, right? I mean, that's a whole lot of building across the globe, so to speak. What is FiOS? What is Entekra? Tell us about the product. Let's learn why what you do is so valuable and is the better way to build.
Well, the first, I mean, it's an important question. I mean, we had to come up with a name to describe what we did, because what we did learn in the research that we were doing, and this did come up at the very early stages, was we kept hearing, oh, we've seen this before, or you're just a component manufacturer. And at the very beginning, we're going, because effectively component manufacturers don't exist in Europe either. You don't just go out and buy components. That's not the way the building industry operates, because we have the expression that says, and this is, I think, extremely important, if it's not a system, then it's not a solution. You don't go out when you go to buy a car and you buy the wheel and you say, I've got a car. No, you've got a wheel. Or you go out and you buy the engine and say, I've got a car. No, you haven't. You've got an engine. So you go out and you buy a component, which by definition is a component. It's a piece. That's not a solution. Offsite, and that doesn't matter whether you're a modular or whether you're a company like ours, offsite is a solution. It's a system. Just same as the modular guys, the companies that you guys are from, you build a whole house. You've got the system. You're pulling everything together. That's what we do, but from a panelization perspective, we pull everything together. A component on itself isn't that. It's just it's only a tiny part of what we do. I mean, we would say that the actual components, the wooden part that's nailed through the machinery, only accounts for about 20% of what we do. 80% of our value is created before we ever cut a stick or put a nail in a piece of timber. It's the process of pulling everybody together and figuring out the problems before they ever hit the building site, and then designing those physical hard elements to work as efficiently as possible when you get to the building site. It's not the other way around. It's not, I have a load of timber sitting in my yard, I want to add some value to it, I'm going to nail that together and put a set of wall panels out on the site and hope that it all works, and away you go. And then nobody has integrated that with the floor system or with the roof system. They've just done the walls. That's not offsite. And so when people said to us, yeah, we've seen this before, or you're just like a component company, and really we've used wall. I've heard this expression so many times. We've used walls before, but we didn't really get any benefit. Of course you didn't get any benefit, because that's all you've got. Just a set of walls. You haven't got a system. In order to get the benefit of offsite, you have to be getting a system. And that's why when we say it's a fully integrated offsite solution. So we're integrating with the plumber, the architect, the engineer, the concrete guy, the electrician, the framers on site, the cities, like you name it. We are talking to every single one of those, and we are looking for solutions that people don't even think about, with the one objective, which is to get that building up as fast and as efficiently as possible. And when we say efficiently, we mean efficiently in terms of labor and efficiently in terms of the use of material. So it's a far more detailed approach and a technological approach, because again, I think that's the other distinction between offsite in Europe and component manufacturing here is, and you'll see it in our name. I mean, the name Entekra means the EN stands for engineering, the TEK stands for technology, and the RA, the RASH, stands for the rational use of labor and materials. That's the key to offsite construction: engineering, technology, and the rational use of labor and materials. And so technology is a huge part of what we do, right from the design at the get-go, through the 3D modeling, to the CAM files being sent to the automated machinery out on the factory floor, to the technology that we use with doing virtual walkthroughs with our customers, to the reporting technology that's actually on the site directly back to our office in Ireland, that then sends the modified CAM file back to the factory floor. It's extremely high tech.
Well, it really is. And I mean, that's kind of a testament. We were talking off camera to why you have so many young people that want to even work at Entekra. Like we struggle here in the United States to get young people into the trades because, like you said, they're not interested in going to trade school to learn how to swing a hammer properly.
No, that's correct. I mean, and that's one of the things I try to get this point across to people. When I hear this argument all the time that, oh, the reason why we can't get young people into the construction industry is because we don't have trade schools anymore. And I mean, they're looking at it completely the wrong way. The reason why you don't have people going to trade schools is because young people don't want to go to them. Why do they not want to go to them? Because this generation grew up, including my own kids, they literally grew up with an iPad in one hand and an iPhone in the other. And you're saying to them, I want you to come in and work in an industry and learn to swing a hammer. That doesn't mean that's not a valuable job and that they shouldn't be doing it. But from their perspective, I'm talking about front, and you have to put yourself in the perspective of the customer, and they're the customer. That young kid does not want to swing a hammer. That young kid wants to be using technology. And it looks at an industry that hasn't changed in 200 years and said, I'm not going to that trade school. So these people who go around with this misnomer, misinformation saying, oh, we need to open up more trade schools. Be my guest, guys. Go ahead and open them up. You're not going to fill them because the people don't want to do them because you have not made the industry sexy. Yeah. Now, on the other hand, we run a certified training course in Ireland in offsite construction. And it's filled with young people. We're oversubscribed in it because we're training people in modern technology applied to construction. And they want to learn about that. In fact, I think I have some photographs I sent you of the young people standing outside the office, the latest group of 18 that we actually have going through that course. I don't know if you can find it there or not.
Yeah, well, keep going and I'll.
They will graduate this year and we'll probably employ most of them. And the next year we'll take another 18 on. And literally those people are learning about high levels of technology. And there they are, I mean, directing and driving highly automated equipment 6,000 miles away, running through 3D models of their building, discussing the benefits of different types of engineering in that building. It's a completely different way. They're not scratching their head on the building site in the wind and the rain or the sun and the heat, trying to figure out how it's to be done. They're sitting in front of a computer doing a 3D model of that building. They know, like that's an example now of a customer, believe it or not. That particular photograph there, okay. That's with McCaughey out of our company, showing a customer through doing a 3D walkthrough using visual reality of his building. So they came up to the office and we basically walked their building before it ever went to the building site. And that's exactly what he's doing. In fact, that customer almost got slightly sick because he got up on the roof of the building and so realistic to him when he was looking down, he was actually starting to get vertigo. So.
Well, you know, I've done some of those 3D renderings and virtual walkthroughs, and they're becoming more and more realistic today. You know, and thanks to the gaming industry, they're the ones who's brought this technology.
Absolutely. I mean, we can actually now take an iPad. We have another software. We can take an iPad and we can actually pick a point on this. If we go to the slab, we can actually put that video, that Deluxe or that piece of software to that point on the slab, and you can actually virtually see the house in front of you, although it's not built, but you actually see how it actually works on the slab.
Yeah, you can see all the layers, right?
All the layers, correct. I mean,
Yeah.
so you're not waiting to stand on a building site going, how's this going to work? I mean, this other expression that we never saw before, and genuinely, we never heard of the expression field verify until we came to the US. Didn't know what it meant, because the idea that a European architect or engineer would put something on a drawing that says, no, you figure it out on the site, they wouldn't get paid. And that's, I mean, I'm not joking when I say that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't get paid. Because with all of this technology today, and again, you go back to the 1960s when you put a man on the moon. We could put a man on the moon, and you're saying today that you have to field verify something, that you can't figure it out with all of the technology that exists. You can't figure it out before you go to the building site. I mean, think about how ridiculous a concept that is. You can't figure it out.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's super difficult to figure out that we can have so much technology to do those things, but we can't figure out how to run the rebar to the grounding rod to the wire.
And then I want to ask you this question: which do you think is more expensive to do? To do it on that computer screen and take the time and do it, or to wait till you get to the building site and then discover you've got another problem and try to rectify that? And again, this is where I think that people are not seeing the true benefits of offsite. It's a hell of a lot cheaper to figure it out on a computer screen than it is standing on a building site with 5 or 6 men standing around and a gradall or a crane or equipment, people figuring out, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Yeah. And somebody has to call an engineer. So can the engineer figure it out, or get the engineer to visit the site, when that all could have been done before it ever went to the site?
Absolutely. Well,
crazy.
Well, that kind of leads us into, we were talking, construction productivity, right? Yeah. And having a streamlined approach, a ballet of coordination. And to answer your question, because you asked it, it is definitely cheaper to figure it out on paper before you ever get everybody mobilized to the field.
That is correct. And we won't go to the site until we know that it's figured out. That's our objective. We don't go there, and that's the hardest job probably that we have with dealing with the trades, is that we're saying to them, no, you've got to tell us this information now, because this house is not going to that site until you tell us. You're not going to wait till you're standing there in the frame. You're going to take the 10 minutes now, and you're going to figure out where it is. We're not asking you to do rocket science. We're simply asking you to take a look at the drawing. In fact, you can come to our office and we'll bring you in and show you the 3D model of the building. So we'll show you the building. We can actually physically show it to you. Say, here it is. Now you just tell us where you're putting this, or what do you want to do in that particular point in the building. It's not rocket science. Just take the time to do it. Let's not do it on the building site where it's costing everybody a fortune. So, and actually, you could add into that now with these. I know we could probably talk about this later, but just when you add in all these COVID restrictions as well, this idea of actually mounting people into the building site to try to figure out the problems, that's going to be an issue at least for the next year or so. You're going to have to try to figure out stuff off-site rather than bring people to the site to do it for everybody's safety. But you were talking about productivity, and this is the one area where that sort of, out of the research that we did, that really sort of on one hand shocked us, and on the other hand said, this is the opportunity. This is where off-site can win. And what I mean by that is, if you look at U.S. residential construction productivity over the last 60 years, it has declined. Mm-hmm. And it's going down. Now, think about this. U.S. construction is the single largest sector of the U.S. economy. So if you want to have a booming economy, the best way to do it is to get your productivity up in the construction industry. Now, every other sector of the U.S. economy over the last 60 years has improved its productivity, bar one, the construction industry. I think the graph that I have shows that agriculture has gone up somewhere in the region of 1,600 to 1,700%. manufacturing as a whole, or the US economy as a whole, has gone up 400%. And US residential construction productivity has declined. I mean, that's a pretty shocking statistic, and it's sort of the one where the building industry is doing this.
Yeah.
No, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that, because up to now, what you've had is a view in the US industry that I'll just throw more people at the problem to sort it out. And it's the way they get their costs under control is to throw more and more inexperienced people at it so they can keep their costs lower to try to solve the problem. But the reality is they're actually decreasing productivity. And it's a bit like, you know, if you were building 100 houses for the sake of argument, it took 100 people to build them.
Mm-hmm.
And now you build, but next year you build 200 houses, but it took you 220 people. Yes, you increased your output, but your productivity declined. Your costs actually went up per unit, because the whole point about productivity is that your cost per unit should decline, but not if you throw more people at it. And this is where people are, I mean, the single biggest issue, particularly in California now, is the provision of homes and the affordability. Well, there is a direct correlation in every industry and in every product between increasing your productivity and lowering your costs, and vice versa. If you have lower productivity, your costs increase. It's a definitive fact now. We have decreasing productivity. So QED, prices can only go one way. That's up. Right. Now, so when you say to that, if my problem is housing affordability and costs going up, what's my solution? And this is where I'm saying the opportunity is. What is my solution? Well, my solution is to find another process. So, like what we would say is, if your current building process is labor constrained, and you can't change the labor constraint, then QED, you need to change the process. That's what every other industry would do. Well, it doesn't matter whether if you're making kitchens, or whether you're making TVs, or whether you're making cars. If you needed to increase your output in any of those industries, you would look to automation and technology as a way to increase your output and lower your costs. The building industry, however, and without, I can say this without any fear of contradiction, has looked at it completely the other way. I will just throw more people at it.
Why is that though? Why are they so hesitant to make the switch or use technology? Because it sounds like it, you know, you and we do it. I mean, it just, to me, it's a no-brainer. Why is the rest of the US and some of these really big builders out there and others struggling with making the switch?
Well, I think there are two interesting points here, Dave. The one is the model itself for offsite construction. And if you look at the model for offsite construction in Europe, the factories and the offsite companies are not typically builders. They're like us. They're independents that supply the building industry. I think the US has suffered up to now by the fact that there have been a number of prominent cases where people in the building industry got into the offsite industry and it didn't work out so well for them. And then they have said, okay, that's been sort of used as a way to prove that offsite construction doesn't work. But it wasn't that offsite construction didn't work, it was that the model didn't work. What I mean by that is, if you're a builder and you set an offsite company up, you effectively only have one customer, that's yourself.
Right.
You're directly dependent on one market and one customer. So if the market goes up or down, that investment you've made is directly impacted by that. Whereas companies like ours and the European model of offsite construction, we're diversified across both product line and customer. So we're not supplying just one customer, we're supplying multiple different customers. We're not just supplying single family, we're supplying single family, multifamily, hospitality, hospital,
right.
You name it. We're right across. If it's wood frame, we're right across the spectrum. So we have the ability to go in and out of different sectors of the industry that are either going up or down, because that's the way industry works. I mean, to use that expression, you should never put all your eggs in one basket. Well, in effect, when a construction company gets into offsite construction themselves, then they're putting all their eggs in one basket. Whereas we have our eggs spread out, among a multitude of different markets. So that's one side, and the other side of it is I think people misunderstand what it takes to run a high-tech manufacturing company. And what I mean by that is people think that because they see wood on a building site every day and they see guys swinging a hammer at it, that somehow that means they have an expertise in manufacturing. But stick framing on site and using 3D modeling, design and engineering teams, pulling everybody together, running it down CAD files, running down high-tech machinery, bears no relationship to actually being on a building site. This is a high-tech manufacturing company. Unless you have experience in high-tech manufacturing, you're going to run into a problem, because if you think that offsite construction is simply a matter of taking stick framing and putting it under a roof, you're going to fail. You're guaranteed to fail. You must look at it from the point of view of this is a clean page, and how can I apply modern lean manufacturing techniques to my factory manufacturing. And I think up to now, what you've had is builders as well over the last 30 years who have entered it, who misunderstood what it took to run one of these kind of factories. In fact, I walked around a company back in the early 2000s in the boom that was in offsite construction here in the US, and I can remember coming out of it and saying to the guys I was with, this company would be closed in a year, and it was. And it was clear that the people who were running it knew nothing about manufacturing. They thought they did, but they had come from a building site. They knew a lot about stick framing, and they were very skilled at stick framing on a site, but it didn't transfer to high-tech manufacturing in a building. That's a completely different skill. And much as the way I would say it, I'll also say this about myself. I know very little about construction. I know a hell of a lot about offsite manufacturing. And just because I know about offsite construction doesn't mean I know about offsite manufacturing doesn't mean I know about construction, and vice versa. Just because you know how to put up a house on a building site doesn't mean you know how to you can't see it, how you know how to run a 200,000 square foot automated factory. There are different skill sets. And I think there's horses for courses. So that's part of the reason why I think it hasn't happened here. There's been some bad taste left in people's mouths. There's been a bad business model applied to it. And then the other thing has been, obviously, that there's been a relatively easy access to labor. And I mean, what I say is whenever they needed more labor, you just basically turned on the spigot and the labor came from south of the border. You didn't need it, you turned it off and it went back south of the border. And so it was a much more risk-free way for people to approach increasing their output. Now, not increasing their productivity, but increasing their output. But I think we all now acknowledge that those days are going away. We've seen what happened after 2009 in the last Great Recession. A lot of those people who were in the industry left, and they either went into other industries or they went back south of the border, and they're not coming back either because immigration situation tightening on the border has made it more difficult, or the fact is that the Mexican economy has done better over the last 10 years than it had prior to that, and people are starting to get better incomes and better lives down there. So that it's not as easy, and they don't necessarily want to come here now like they did. And now this whole COVID-19 thing has added another, I suppose, complication into the whole thing. I mean, a lot of these people that are working in industry here might not necessarily be entitled to get PPP, and might decide that they want to go back south of the border again to their families. And also because the health situation, the COVID situation in Mexico is not as great as it is north of the border. You might find that they're just going back for their own safety as well. So we might find, and I don't know, it's yet to be borne out, we might find that labor actually is less available after this than it was prior to it. So there's an interesting dynamic there that still has to work itself out.
So that leads us, we covered a lot of ground there, and I love your passion about this whole thing, and it's so well thought out. I had your agriculture slide up there. Trying to keep up with Gerry McCaughey is no small task, I can tell you that. So listen, you're right. In 2008, we lost a lot of the labor and the trades in this industry. But that happened to be a good push for offsite construction, right? That helped kind of move it along, and now people are really starting to pay attention to it. Do you feel that the same thing is going to happen with the same thing that's happening now? Like people going south to the border, a lot of people are out of work, they can't work. They're not going to stick around and wait for a paycheck, for one. So does that increase offsite construction's capabilities when we come out of this?
Well, the one metric that I can give you, Dave, that's absolutely factual. Our inquiry rates are running at 350% of normal since the COVID situation started. So, I think of that. Why is that? Well, what has happened there? I think it's a number of factors. I think, yes, there's every day more and more people are considering offsite construction. I think the shutdown that occurred has given people also the opportunity to stop and think. And I think there is more and more concern now about how our site's going to operate once we come back to some form of normalization. We know it's going to be a staged comeback, but we also know that social distancing on site is going to be a major part of that easing of restrictions. So yeah. How do you deal with keeping your product, to come back to that one word again, how do you keep your productivity up if you're going to be limited in the number of people you can have on site at any given time, and that the people that you have on site have to stay away from each other? I think about this. You think it's just one single heavy object on the building site that two people at the moment can go over and pick up. What happens? Yeah. How do you do that if you have to stay 6 feet apart? It's simply not possible. So now there's obviously going to be people who are going to go onto site and they're going to flout the regulations and hope that they don't get caught, or hope that it's a minor misdemeanor and away they go. But the reality about offsite construction is we can cope with those restrictions without any problem. Because I think I sent you some photographs as well. There's a wall there, it's 30 feet long. I have two guys moving that around. Basically, you can move it around with their little finger, because the crane's doing all the heavy lifting. So we have no issue with limiting the number of people. We have no issue with having people to lift heavy objects, because we've got mechanical lifting available to lift every single item that we need. And ironically, it'll have zero impact on our productivity. Zero. We'll still put the house up to plate in one day. So it has, in many ways, the COVID restrictions, I think, has forced people to think about the process. And, that to me, as I would say, it's just another one of those factors, whether it's diminishing labor itself because it's going south of the border, or whether it's the fact that people are saying, I need to make my sites safer. How do you make it safer and keep your productivity up? I'll give you an example. So there's a wall. That wall's about 30 feet long. There's two guys pushing it because it's on a crane. You simply can't do that. Yeah. All right. There's other, you'll see floor panels being dropped into place. Two guys can, take a 40-foot floor panel that's 8 foot wide and manipulate it into position.
There's a roof.
There's a roof going on. We basically have the engineering capability and technology, and there's a floor panel going in. We don't need the manpower, and we certainly don't need the time. Like, I'll give you an example. So we have another customer now who got shut down last week in the Bay Area, and they have the next 50 houses sold. They will potentially be under penalty if they don't get the houses closed. So we're taking over that site. They need to get those houses as fast as possible. There's no way no way that any stick framer could go onto that site and match their schedule. It's impossible. We can. So I think this is an opportunity for offsite, and that's not that I'm saying that we should be benefiting from a negative situation. I'm just simply saying builders now have to deal with a new reality. Offsite is a solution to that new reality. It is safer, and I can't emphasize that enough. We've seen that in Europe, regardless. So it's not just safety in terms of COVID, but just safety in general, because you don't have people lifting things that they shouldn't be lifting. You don't have people working at heights that are somewhat unsafe. The crane and the speed and the size, the way the panels fit together makes the process inherently more safe. You don't have the waste left on site for people for trips and falls. Most industries are trips and falls. We have virtually no waste on our sites. So in every way you look at it, it's a safer way It's a safer process. I mean, what it says, building is a process. We make it safer and more efficient.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think people calculate the entire process and the savings and the liability savings that go in with offsite construction. Less time on site, period, means less people on site, less opportunities for things to go wrong, people to get hurt. Insurance. I mean, there's so much that comes into play when looking at offsite. And I agree. I don't think we're, wanting to gain from a negative situation. But the reality of the world is we need to change. It's not just a situation. We need to change, regardless of whether it's because of, an 2008 crash or, the COVID crisis or what have you. People have to think differently. And if we're going to do the affordable housing, meet the demands of the market and increase productivity, or we were talking about even flow plus releases is something that we spoke a little bit about. You have to change the process in which you're doing it. Like you were saying, you can't keep doing it like we did 100 years ago. I'm seeing it, you're seeing it. And I think this is going to put a lot more pressure with the trade pulls going in the other direction for people to really sit there and scratch their head and say, hey, we need to take a look at this and we need to understand it.
Absolutely. And I mean, even prior to this, just on that, like we've had, believe it or not, we've had a number of insurance companies contact us to ask about the system because they're actually contemplating the idea that they would give a reduced insurance premium to builders that were building their homes off-site, because they believe it'll lead to less health injuries on the building site, but also it'll lead to a higher quality product with less warranty. So we've had one of our customers here in Northern California won their national quality award because, and they said they came down to us, they brought 20 of their people down here because they said they were using our system. They outperformed so there's another, and that's not me saying that. It's very hard to get a compliment from a builder, even when they know they like the system. It's very hard to get it. So when they give it, it's hard earned, but for them to come along and actually say to us, you helped us win our national quality award. So of all the divisions in all the United States, this one division using our system won their quality award. I mean, that's telling itself. And again, that's why, the tentacles and the benefits of offsite are starting now to permeate through the industry. But it's like everything. I mean, to use that expression, Rome wasn't built in a day. We don't expect the market to flip over and convert to offsite construction in a day or a year or 2 years or 3 years. But I always had this expression back in Ireland when I'd say to our sales guys, the more offsite that's built, the more offsite that will be built. Because there's nothing like the proof that's in the pudding. And so we're seeing that now day in and day out. You start in a particular area with a builder. For an example, we started in another particular area here in Northern California. And two of the builders that are in that region wouldn't talk to us prior to this. So we started with their competitor. Now both of them want us to supply them.
Right.
I mean, that's the crazy thing about it. But seeing is believing. I mean, I'm not criticizing them. It's easy for me to say these things, but nothing beats seeing it. Seeing is believing. But I want to go back to one point you said there about not looking at the true costs. This is an area where I think the building industry really has got it wrong. And it's got to do with the way the purchasing is set up. Because when you see, and I make this distinction between the smaller and medium-sized builders and the large builders. The smaller and medium-sized builder where the owner is directly involved in the negotiations, it's his money. He understands the costs. He knows that every day on site is costing him a lot of money. So when you go to him or her and explain the benefits to them, they're very willing and very quick to see this can put added profit on their bottom line. However, when you go to larger builders where there's a purchasing agent or manager in the middle, the problem is that most of those purchasing people are incentivized to buy whatever widget they were buying this year at half a cent cheaper than that same widget they were buying last year. So that's their objective. They don't look at the total process. They're not looking at the total cost. If you say to them, and what's the value of a day saved on the building site to you? They don't know and they don't care. So how can you have a rational discussion about the true cost of building with a purchasing agent who doesn't know what the implications of the decision they're making has on the operation?
Right. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that happens. So what you end up is the purchaser then says, oh, I'm going to buy this widget because it's a half a cent cheaper than the widget last year. They have done their job correctly. And they can quite rightly go to their boss and say, I've done a good job. Now, the guy on site, the operations guy on site says, it's going to take me an hour longer to install that widget. So now the saving has been lost. The buyer still says, I did my job correctly. So how do you get around? And that's the biggest problem. So from our perspective, and I think for all the offsite companies, is you need to find a way to explain your benefits to the CFO at least in the organization. Right. Better if you can get to the CEO. But even at that stage, I give you an anecdotal story where I sat with the CFO of a very large builder, and I actually asked him, I said, so how much is a day on site costing you? And he said to me, I don't know. So he then, literally on the back of a napkin at dinner, started to try to do a calculation as to what a day saved on site, what the value of that would be to him. But more the point is not the amount, it was the fact is that's what it was down to. Trying to figure it out on a napkin. How do the builders not know for every division they're in?
Right.
Because they'll all talk about cycle time reduction, but they don't know what the value of the cycle time reduction is. So we have done, and there's been some very interesting, information that's been produced by Glenn Cottrell from Ibicus, where he did the report on the cost of quality and what a cost of a site, a day on site is. And also, I should say that George Casey has done a very interesting, through the Housing Innovation Alliance, has done a very interesting sheet on how to calculate, how a builder should calculate his total costs on site. So if you do those, then you can have a true negotiation. But without them, you can't. But I'll give you an example that we know everybody will agree there's a value. There's a definite cost associated with every day on site. So what we're arguing then is what's the value? So let's assume, and I always sometimes say to the builder, I don't care what the amount is. Let's just agree there's a value. Now let's talk about the days. So if on the framing I can take 15 days off your framing cycle time, which I can without even a shadow of doubt. In fact, in some cases I'm going to take much more than that, but I can take 15 days off your framing cycle time. So now we just have to simply look and say, is you want to arbitrarily put a figure against that? Is it $200? Is it $500? Is it $750? What's the figure? You decide. Assume it's $500, and in the Bay Area, it's at least $500 per day. There's $7,500 saved just by shaving the cycle time. Not talking about waste removal or quality or warranty or anything else. Just simply on cycle time. But sorry, Dave, go on.
Yeah, go ahead. We're going to wrap up here a little bit on this. We have quite a few questions and answers coming in. So go ahead and finish that, and then let's get to some of these people. Okay,
because I want to get to this point, because if you take it that we can take 15 days, and that's inarguable at this point in time. We do it every single house we do. But that's only half the equation.
Yeah.
Because what people also don't understand is, and this is an important expression, precision improves productivity, right? So what you have and productivity will lower costs. But what you have currently in building sites here is, this idea that a quarter of an inch in 10 feet is an acceptable level of tolerance. And we're working to tolerances of 2 millimeters in 10 meters or 33 feet. But the more precise your building is, the easier it is for every other trade to work in it. Whether that's the countertop guy, the cabinet guy, the painter, the tiler, you name it. If you've got a precise product and the dimensions match and that house is plumb and lined and it works properly, everybody else gets out of that house faster. So we have information from our customers that are saying they're actually saving upwards of 30 days on cycle time using our system. Now, you put the same $500 against that, or pick whatever number you want, but let's assume it's 500. in the Bay Area. That's $15,000 that can go straight to the bottom line, or it can be reduced from the price and make the house more affordable. Whatever you want to do. I'm a full-blown capitalist, so I'm not saying what they should or shouldn't do with it, but I'm just saying there's $15,000 that's sitting there simply by reducing your cycle time.
Right.
That's what. But if you don't know what the value of your cycle time is, you don't get focused on it. But yet every conference call that every big builder will do, they'll mention cycle time. Yet not one of them know what the total cost per day is of it. Because if they did, their investors would be screaming down their necks going, you need to cut your cycle time. You need to cut your cycle time because there's easy profit to be made. So it's getting the builders, and we as the offsite industry, both in modular and in the advanced panelization side of things, we really need to focus more on getting the true figures of what a cost on a building site is to a national home builder. That's what will turn heads, and it'll turn the heads of their investors as well.
Yeah, 100%. You know, and we're going to hop into Q&A here, Gerry, and there's been a lot of people tuned in. I'm going to bring Jennifer in here in a second. But first, I figured we'd share your joke.
Can I tell us?
I know you have a joke. And second, I'm looking forward, you know, I think we need to sit down and have a real good long format video interview where we can go through all of these topics and really put it out there and segment this out there, because my thinking and your thinking are, you know, right on par with each other. And I think understanding this whole cyclical cost structure and how it actually works in those aha moments when somebody actually goes up to an offsite site and sees it, we need to do more of that and put it out there. So let's follow up on that. Here's your joke, and then we're going to go into Q&A, and I'm going to bring Jennifer in. That's it.
Except this is not a joke. This is the truth. So stick framer to a European. I can stick frame that building for you. The European says, you can't stick that frame that where I'm from. The stick frame saying, where's that? The European says, the 21st century.
I love it. It's true. It's true.
You don't in Europe. You absolutely don't.
Hey, so. Jennifer.
Hey.
We learned something during this post. Jen, you were putting up some questions. I don't know if anybody else saw it, but I saw it flashing on the screen. I'm like, well, I've never seen this before. So
yeah, you know what? And I have to say there are too many comments and too many questions for our friend Gerry here. So
is it that many?
A lot of fans out there, Gerry. They're all on the call today.
Well, I don't know if there were fans. I was looking, Jennifer, you were going to say to me, there's a lot of comments there. Some of them I can't repeat, which would not surprise me either, by the way. But I have, being Irish, I have very broad shoulders and very thick skin. So
well, they serve you well, Gerry. So, but in terms of questions, Margaret has a great one. Margaret Whelan is asking, so, you know, you share all of this information and you're talking about cycle time, and obviously you just, you know, made this probably politically incorrect joke about stick framers. But Margaret would like to know, how are the framers responding to this, and who owns the cranes?
Hi, Margaret. You know Margaret very well. Actually, what I'd say is, this is the funny thing. I mean, I said to Dave earlier on, I mean, Rome isn't built in a day. But the funny thing is, the last 6 months, now, and we've tried to figure this out, Jennifer, but the last 6 months have seen a dramatic change in attitude. Now, whether that's, I can put down different, I can sort of say it's a number of reasons that are causing this. One is the sheer fact that we built this factory and it's there. It was one thing us operating out of a 27,000 square foot semi-automated factory and guys saying, they've seen this before, it's not serious, to us being supported by LP, building what is the most automated factory of its kind in North America. And when we take builders through it, and I suppose this is part of probably what's happening, when we take builders through this building and they come out the other side of it, they literally go, wow, I have never seen anything like this. And I think they're going back to their framers and saying, listen, guys, you may not like it. You may think it's a threat to you. It's not. And we want to go this way. And I think that's changing their attitude on one hand. But I also think that some of the, and I'll say this, what I'll say is, we haven't publicly announced this, but I'll say it here now, is we have formulated a legal strategic relationship with the third largest framer in Northern California as of a week ago, which means now we have an unlimited reach and manpower for offsite construction in Northern California. So that was, and I think Margaret knows the difficulties we had up to now, but that actually was signed as of a week and a half ago.
Wow.
So that is so we have now basically have unlimited access to labor at fixed matrices pricing. So we know before we go to price a job what the labor was. Up to now, we had no clue what they were going to charge us. Now that's set out. But on top of that, now we've had a number of other smaller framers. This is the interesting thing now that's happened too, because in California it's a market. It's a what they call a turnkey market. So the framers typically supply the lumber as well. But what happens is the smaller builders don't have the wherewithal, the financial clout to be able to buy the lumber. So they can't really supply certain types of jobs unless they're relatively small. They can't afford to go into those jobs. Now they can if they tee up with us. So they're now coming to us saying, we want to go after, for example, we have one in here at the moment for a hotel project, a 4-story hotel. And the builder, the framer, has a good relationship with the developer, but he doesn't have the wherewithal to put up the material to build that building. But he can come to us and we can do it. But he's now going back to the builder also saying, I'm going to cut your cycle time. I'm going to have heads on beds 3 months sooner using this system as well. So we're now starting to see that turnaround starting to happen. But as Margaret well knows, I mean, at the very beginning, it was literally stay away, and they were fighting us. And I think what was Mahatma Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So I think we're getting close to the winning stage now.
Yeah. That's true. And that actually brings us right into Rodney Hall's question, because he wanted to know of the builders who've used FiOS to date in Northern California, are they still testing it sporadically? Have they converted 100% away from site built? What will it take them, to fully convert?
Well, actually, all of our, we were actually funny, we did this last week for a board meeting. All of the customers that we have started with in California, bar one, are all on their second or third project with us. Mm-hmm. So there's now the other one is their first project. So it's not that we have not, it's just they're still on their first project, but all of the other customers now are on their second and third. Actually, one of them's on their fourth project. So what we're seeing now is the builders themselves starting to convert more and more of their projects over. And I think, quite rightly from their perspective, they've had a relationship going back with their framers 10, 15 years. You don't upend those in a matter of weeks. It takes time because they have to build the same level of trust with us and see that we can deliver on what we're saying we're going to do. So that has obviously started to happen. But I also think now that this relationship that we have with the third largest framer, he's also has relationships going back 10, 20 years with the builder. So that now brings an added piece of confidence. So now you've got Entekra on one hand and a very well-known framer on the other hand coming together to say, okay, we can go after that. We can go after that project. So I think once these restrictions lift up, I think we're going to see a fundamental change in the approach. So that's how it's been going. So it's been going very well from that perspective.
Which is terrific. So Rodney also wanted to know if the CAD work is still being done in Ireland. Is that here in the US? How's it going with staffing the team here domestically?
No, all the design engineering work is still primarily taking place in Ireland. And that's, Rodney knows this as well. He's been helping us out in this. The difficulty you have here is because there isn't a history of offsite construction in particularly in this, over in your part of the world, there's been more of it. But in California, there basically has never been a history of offsite construction. And so it's impossible to recruit people to do this kind of work that we need to get done. You'll get a roof truss designer. You'll get a guy who maybe knows how to do an engineered floor. But can you get a guy who can actually take a building the whole way through from the floor, the roof, and the walls? Not a chance. So we have sort of, I'm not going to say we've given up. We haven't given up. We're still looking, but we've had to come to the acceptance that we're going to have to build the team in Ireland and then hopefully move some of those guys out here as the core and then run the same training. And to be fair now to the city of Modesto and Stanislaus, we have been discussing with them now the idea that we would run the same training course out here that we're running in Ireland. And I think that'll probably be the best way for us to get the type of quality and candidate that we actually want. We're going to have to train them ourselves. Yeah. Colleges here, and we're actively discussing that with Modesto and Stanislaus County.
Yeah, Dave has a conversation coming up with Sarah Ann Logan in the next couple of weeks. She's with Volumetric and Lab House. And one of the things we're finding also is from a design perspective, we can't find enough good talent to design into these structures. So how do we cultivate that educational component and really teach our next generation of workers, number one, how fabulous and exciting this is. And number two, literally how to do the work. And it might be that we have to import them. This might be the new labor pool that comes from offshore to help in this initiative.
It's true, but also, I mean, I think here is, and again, this is where the offsite industry itself, I think, needs to get together. We need to go to the colleges and universities and teach them about offsite construction.
Right.
Because that's what's happened. I mean, I've seen this over the 20, 30 years I've been in the industry. Like there are colleges in the United Kingdom and in Ireland that run offsite courses. Like they'll have either modules or they'll actually have full-blown certifications or diplomas in offsite construction. So that's happening. But then you go to, I was speaking in Brazil last year at a construction conference, because offsite's really taking off in Brazil now as well. And it was incredible to see the talent. I mean, that's when I came back from Brazil, the one thing that struck me was, because I went around a number of offsite companies that were operating actually in the Brazilian market, and the quality of the young people that was available to them was staggering. But they actually were learning about offsite construction in their colleges. Yet offsite has a very small proportion, although it's starting to take off in that market. But what has happened is that the industry, and here's an important point here, and again, we're not going to have enough time on this, but I want to say this. Here's an important thing to say here is, if you look at the United Kingdom and you look at California in terms of housing and the crisis that there is, and it is a crisis. California has a full-blown, the governor has called it a full-blown housing crisis. The United Kingdom has a housing crisis. So what did the United Kingdom do? Now, remember this, offsite construction is still only a minor part of overall construction in the UK. It's still mostly concrete block. But nonetheless, where wood frame is built, it's always offsite. But nonetheless, the UK government got involved and said, okay, on behalf of our people, we need to find a way to get houses delivered more affordably. So it put a gentleman in place called Mark Farmer, and I encourage everybody to read this. It's called Modernize or Die. He wrote a report that came out late last year, called Modernize or Die, which basically was his recommendations of what the industry needs to do in order to increase affordability and increase productivity. And that report came out and said, the only solution is the use of offsite construction. We can build higher quality, more affordably, more productively using offsite construction. The UK government has now stepped in behind that and gone to the industry and said to the industry at the highest levels, you need to be looking at offsite construction. California is in the exact same situation. So what's our governor doing about it? Nothing. I mean, it's quite clear. To use what Einstein said, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. Right?
That's so true. It's so true.
So if you don't change, what the hell do you think is going to happen? You're going to get more of the same. So we have a model here in the UK where the government has said we got the same problem, went out and did a report to the research and said, okay, we found the answer, and now went to the industry and said, okay, industry, you need to adapt and change, and is now encouraging them and helping them to do it. Right. So there's the solution, and we as the offsite industry, the modular and our types of company, need to go to the relevant government, either at federal level or at state level, and say, listen, guys, there's a solution out here. Well, we need to be doing something about it. The laissez-faire attitude of just letting it go is going to just result in us having citizens who can't afford to buy homes, and none of us want that.
So when you talk about those industry changes, another question that came up is, do you see that, from Josh Pino, do you see the day where a homeowner can order the framing for a room addition and you'll deliver it on site in a day? So are we turning into Amazon here?
We could do that. I don't think we'll do it as a company. We could do it in the morning if we wanted to. We could go into ADUs in the morning if we wanted to. It's not our business. That's the way we look at it. But we could, I mean, if I wanted to set up an ADU manufacturing facility attached to the Entekra building, I mean, I could do it in a heartbeat. I mean, I don't want to scare people who are in ADU, but we could literally do it more effectively, more efficiently, and do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, well, ADUs has definitely been a hot topic lately, as has single family for rent. You know, obviously there's a lot of conversation around both those topics.
Absolutely, and we're very focused on what we're meant to do. We don't go off into tangents all over the place. We see the ADU market. We're happy to talk to people. Actually, we have a lot of people coming to us looking for us to supply them the panels to make the ADUs. We're happy to talk to them. We're not going to compete with them. We're not going to go into that product. We know exactly what we want to do, and we're going to stay focused on that.
Great. So Jim Baldwin would like to know: can you describe the tool chain you use for design, validation, and CAM?
Sorry?
Can you describe the tool chain you use for design, validation, and CAM?
The tool change? I'm not sure what he means by that.
I think he's talking about design. I'm thinking it's design software. Is that what he's asking?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to disclose the software that we're actually using, other than to say we've been using it for over 25 years, and it's out of Europe, and it's a fully integrated CAD/CAM design for manufacturer software. So when we design our product in 3D and it's ready to go, it's also producing the CAM files at the same time. So it's a highly sophisticated piece of software that's been around for over 25 years, and its purpose is to link into fully integrated CAD/CAM manufacturing. So, but it's one that we've spent millions, and I mean millions of dollars or euros on developing since I was first in that industry 25 years ago. So it's extremely, and I say this now, it's extremely sophisticated. It is part of, again, why we run into difficulties trying to hire people here, is they're not used to using the kind of stuff that we actually have. And I'm not overstating to say we can do things with a building and design that other people just simply cannot do. And on top of that, we can do it faster. Again, the productivity is not just about what you can do on the building site or in the factory floor. It's also about productivity from the design and engineering perspective. So we have put a lot of time and effort into that over the years.
So along those lines, Margaret had another question. She wanted to know what's included in your kit, you know, from MEPs and insulation. How else are you enabling, others to, or to shorten that build cycle time?
So at the moment, we're not adding anything in other than the wood, if you say the lumber and wood elements into the building, and any of the metalwork that's required to pull it together. And Margaret will know as well from my previous company in Ireland, we did a lot more. Like what we say here is the product that we're supplying even today, which is seen as being advanced and somewhat modern and disruptive, is actually 20 years behind what we were doing in 2005. So we purposely have taken the decision not to add other items into the product yet, because getting the builders over the hump of switching from stick framing to offsite construction is somewhat a leap of faith for them. And so the more you start adding into the product initially before they know who you are, the harder you make their buying decision. So if you start add plumbing and electric and MEPs and stuff into the building in advance, now you've got a whole lot of discussions over who's liable for it, what's going to happen with their existing trades, who's going to certify it. So you get into a whole lot of other unnecessary discussions. So our objective and our clear stated plan, and we've had this discussion with our customers, is trust us. Let us try you out with this system. You know what it looks like. It's not taking you too far away. When you're happy that you now know that offsite construction works the way that it can, we're happy to discuss with you how far you want to go with it. But we're not into the route of, and I think a number of companies here have also made this mistake where they've come into this market thinking, oh, we'll go to full closed panel and we'll put the sheetrock and the plumbing and the wiring into the frame. And they have found themselves, one, having difficulty selling it, and two, they've had difficulty with regulators, and then three, they've had difficulty when they got to the sites, because the trades just aren't. When you use our system, precision on site is extremely important. But when you go to closed panel, I mean, you're talking about another quantum leap in precision that's required. So you have got to get the industry familiar with what you're doing before you make that leap. So our view is we're in this for the long run, and we have stages to go through before we get there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we've had, a ton of questions and so many comments in the feed, almost too many to read through and share. But clearly you have a lot of believers in the group who do think that this is certainly the wave of the future. What do you think about what you are walking into in terms of goals for 2020? You were already named Manufacturer of the Year by the Building Systems Council and AHB, winning the Ivory Prize early in the year. Obviously, so much has changed. What do you think? Where do you go from here now, considering where we are in the climate, the macro climate right now?
Well, I think everybody's. I'm with everybody. Everybody hopes that the restrictions are going to get lifted soon, and everybody hopes that we're going to have a V-shaped recovery, or certainly a shallow U-shaped recovery. My feeling is that this year is going to be, we've already lost a quarter. Let's be honest. We've lost a quarter out of the year. I have a sense that the quarter after we open back up again is probably going to be relatively slow as people try to figure out the new reality and try to figure where their jobs are and how confident they are about what's going on. So I see that overall for house starts, we're going to take a hit during this year. However, I'm optimistic that for 2021, we're going to see a pretty strong recovery. And the reason for that is that, despite the negativity or what we're feeling at the moment is, the United States economy was going strong. The demand was there. We've had a hit here that wasn't driven by an economic factor. It was driven by health. So I'm sort of in my head, and I did economics in my own time back in college as well, and I can't see the real negative here. Yes, we're going to get hit by what has happened, but I would be very optimistic about 2021, and I think it's going to be there's going to be positivity throughout the last two quarters. I don't think we're just going to get a straight bounce back up again. However, that's on the macro side of it. However, what is incredibly interesting to us at the moment is that our inquiry levels are running at 350% of normal. That is incredible. So we don't know, as I said Dave earlier on, we don't know exactly why that is. We think there are reasons why it's happening, but we can't say for certain. But we know that even yesterday, we had a visitor come here who was talking about a multifamily project in a close proximity. And his view was, yeah, this will clear up. And he said, but it was funny, he said, when this does clear up and we go to site, we want this thing built as fast as possible. So, in some ways, the COVID thing is making people think that way as well. Right. They don't want to be hanging around. When they want to get into the ground, they want to get the thing finished and away. So I'm optimistic that we're going to see a very strong end of year. So
we're going to go to that.
We're still smiling. We're still smiling from that perspective.
No, it's a good thing, but I do think it's going to cause people to look differently. And I think we talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. I do think this is going to have people realize, one, how we live, not only from society standpoint, but from health issue standpoints. And today is a different norm than yesterday was. And I think that offsite construction is going to be a different norm than it was yesterday as well. And I think that more and more people are going to do exactly what you're saying. And that you say that, the 350% up, that's just proof that, kind of what we're feeling is truly starting to head that way. You don't see those kind of numbers just because, people are interested, but all of a sudden they're really that interested in panelization or offsite construction. I think they're interested because they know we have to make this shift, and this is forcing them to think that way.
Absolutely, and I would also say, there's never been, and I'll make this call to both I know the modular guys do a great job in marketing the modular industry, and unfortunately, my side of the industry doesn't have as good a voice. I think there's a real opportunity for the modular industry and companies that are like-minded like us to get together and work the powers that be through federal and state governments. I don't think there has been, up to now, and I'm genuinely saying this, what I've seen in terms of information being dispersed out into the industry from the various different bodies that are here is all over the place. it's not, and that's not them. I'm not talking from the modular. I'm talking more about the people who work for the component side. It's all over the place. It's clear it's more about shipping lumber than it is about solving a problem or providing a solution. And it's more about how can you help the framer, as opposed to saying how can you help the industry and how can you help the purchaser. And I think that's where when you see the industry mature to the level where it's saying, let's tell everybody about the benefits and the solutions that we can bring here, not about the fact that we can, put some lumber into that building out on the site and focus on wall panels. Let's focus on the solution and the benefits that it can bring. And I think that if that industry, if there was some way of us all collaborating, I feel in many ways alone in our industry in the US, because I don't think there's many people. There are some. I mean, there are 3 or 4, and I'd say this, it's probably about 3 or 4 companies that really have the same vision that we have, and they're spread out all over the country. But I think there's an opportunity there for a better, clearer message to be sent to the regulators at state level and at federal level about the solutions that are out there.
Well, why don't we put that? I can help pull this industry together, the modular side. If you want to pull the panelized side, maybe that could be our next conversation, you and I, and we won't have to wait so many months in between seeing each other.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do it. I genuinely think that we have as an industry, and I mean the offsite industry, the true offsite industry, those who see it as a system. We have something here that I don't think is being heard properly by the people at the levels who can make the changes that are necessary, and who have a responsibility to the American citizen to ensure that they can get an affordable home.
Absolutely. Right. Well, we're out here every day, trying to push the message and show people what we're doing. We're going to have to wrap up here. We went for a long time. I think you're the longest one yet, Gerry. You don't have anything to say, do you?
Shut up. I don't shut up. That's the problem. I'm told that often. My wife tells me it too. My kids tell me it. I can't. But when I get talking about this industry, Dave, I love it.
Yeah.
They always have. And I have to say this to you and to Jennifer. Genuinely, you are doing a great job. You are absolutely doing a phenomenal job for the industry. It really, you really own this. You've really done a great job. You're getting the information out there. You're getting people to listen. It's incredible what you have done. So I say congratulations to you as well.
Hey, thank you. That means a lot coming from you, because we feel the same about you, seeing all your stuff that you guys put out there, and you're always talking and traveling. So I'm just very honored that we were able to get you on here finally and talk, and I want to do more of it.
I'm right there with you, Dave. Right. I'm glad we were able to make this work today.
Yeah, for sure. So everybody out there, Gerry McCaughey, and you say it McCaughey. Us Americans don't say it correctly. And there's some other ones that we'll get into, but right now I want to let everybody know, if you can tune back in at 2 p.m., we're finalizing a modular set for Good Samaritan Hospital in West Islip, New York. I am sitting in a hotel room. And you know what? Let me finish what I was going to say, Gerry. I got something I want to offer up there. There you go. All right.
There we go.
Mine's back there. So tune in at 2 o'clock. We're doing a 6,500, almost 7,000 square foot modular set for Good Samaritan Hospital. They need some beds and some space. It's a pediatric edition. And I had a young guy on, Gerry, and this will turn true to what you just said. First time project manager on a big job like this, and he said he'd never go back. He goes, he is absolutely just amazed at how perfect and accurate and how it all came together. And he said it's better than I could have ever built on site. And he came from building retail centers in New York City, so he understands it. So, absolutely. Gerry, Entekra is the future, man. I love it. I love everything you're doing, panelization, FiOS, and your whole team, which I hope to interview more of. Keep up the good work, and I hope our paths cross real soon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Jennifer, thanks for helping out since we're in 2 different locations. That was great. Good teamwork, and we'll see you guys next time.
Stay safe.
All right, bye now.
Bye.